In the span of just weeks, 2 major true crime podcast hosts released a thriller. I read both of them. Let's talk about it. So in mid-August of 2022, Ashley Flowers from the major hit true crime podcast Crime Junkie released a fictional thriller titled All Good People Here. And a couple of weeks later, September 13th, 2022, Alaina Urquhart of Morbid podcast also released a fictional thriller titled The Butcher and the Wren. I was sent an ARC copy of The Butcher and the Wren, and I don't think they asked me to give any sort of review. I don't exactly remember. I think I got a DM on TikTok asking if I wanted an ARC copy, and of course I said yes. I also was asked if I wanted a complimentary copy of Ashley Flowers' book, All Good People Here, and I said yes. But unfortunately, I never heard back from them, and that was around the beginning of August. But fortunately, both of these titles were available on Libby, which I love Libby. If you aren't on Libby already, you definitely should be. So I was able to listen to the audiobook, which is pretty much how I consume books these days. And I definitely loved one way more than the other. Now, of course, I have to say reading is subjective. I still would suggest that you check out both of these books just so you create your own opinion, because I think it's also worth mentioning, I'm not a huge thriller reader. I find thrillers to be very similar and cookie cutter, and it takes a lot to really surprise me these days with a thriller. I started reading thrillers way more back when I started reading way more in 2020, of course, when COVID hit, and I think I got thrillered out. Nothing really impressed me anymore, but one of these definitely did. So let's start with the one that released first. All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. Again, this released mid-August of 2020. It is currently sitting as of, what day is it? I don't even know what day it is. September 17th, 2022. It is currently sitting at a 4.07 out of 5 on Goodreads with over 16,000 votes. It's pretty remarkable, and that's a very high rating for Goodreads. This is, of course, Ashley Flowers' debut novel. Again, she is the co-host of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, true crime podcasts out there, Crime Junkie. It's like the #1 true crime podcast. We are in a small town in Indiana, which is where Ashley is from, so this makes sense. And I'm just going to read you the synopsis really quick. Remembers the case of January Jacobs. Everyone in Indiana, Wakarusa? Indiana, I believe is how you say that, remembers the case of January Jacobs, who was found dead in a ditch hours after her family awoke to find her gone. Margot Davies was 6 at the time, the same age as January, and they were next-door neighbors. In the 20 years since, Margot has grown up, moved away, and become a big city journalist. But she's always been haunted by the fear that it could have been her, and the worst part is, January's killer has never been brought to justice. When Margot returns home to help care for her sick uncle, it feels like walking into a time capsule. Wakarusa is exactly how she remembered. Then news breaks about a 5-year-old Natalie Clark from the next town over, who's gone missing under eerily similar circumstances. With all the old feelings rushing back, Margot vows to find Natalie and solve January's murder once and for all. But the police, the family, the townspeople, they all seem to be hiding something. And the deeper Margot digs into Natalie's disappearance, the more resistance she encounters, and the colder January's case feels. Could the killer still be out there? Could it be the same person who kidnapped Natalie? And what will it cost to finally discover what truly happened that night? So, unfortunately, I did not like this book. I gave this one 1 star. I've, again, found it very cookie cutter. It really did not work for me. I did not connect with any of the characters. It felt very bland. It's also worth mentioning, of course, Ashley Flowers was doing interviews about this book, and one of the most common questions was why fiction and not nonfiction? Like, clearly as a true crime host, you go through a lot of cases. I think it would make a little bit more sense to do something nonfiction, so tell us why you want to do fiction. And she described, on the Today Show specifically, how she loved reading Agatha Christie growing up, and how, her mom would read her those books, and she really loved creating a mystery. And she claims that this idea in this book has been in her head since forever. It seems like she's been wanting to write a story similar to this for a long time. But the issue that I had, and a lot of people had as well, according to Goodreads reviews, is it's so eerily similar to the JonBenet Ramsey case out of Boulder, Colorado. Eerily similar, to a point where I really couldn't enjoy the book. She was in beauty pageants, and the brother is suspicious, the family members are suspicious, and it seems like people are trying to help each other in this case, like the family members, to cover up secrets. And she was found in a basement area or at the bottom of the steps, and it seemed so similar that it was so hard to read. And unfortunately, a lot of the reviews wanted to pin Ashley Flowers and the issues that Crime Junkie the podcast has had with plagiarism. And there have been some comments that are really egging on with that. And it's unfortunate because you want somebody, of course, to succeed, especially in this space. And Ashley Flowers has been known to do good in the community, and you want to look up to somebody like that and support them. But unfortunately, this one just did not work for me. But I have seen really great reviews. People who are big Crime Junkies fans seem to have loved this, which is amazing. If you love Crime Junkie and you want to check out Ashley Flowers' book, by all means, check it out. Also, unfortunately, you can see the twist about a mile away. So I gave it 1 star. Moving on to The Butcher and the Wren by Alaina Urquhart, and as of mid-September, it's sitting at 3.94 out of 5 reviews on Goodreads with 930 ratings, which is significantly lower than Ashley Flowers' book. Despite Morbid being just as popular as Crime Junkie, I mean, Crime Junkie, what did they say on the Today Show, has over 1 billion downloads. I'm not sure of the exact number that Morbid has, but I feel like they're just as popular. Crime Junkie may sit at number 1, while Morbid may sit at 3 or 4. So they're right behind each other. From the co-host of chart-topping true crime podcast Morbid, a thrilling debut novel, debut again, told from the dueling perspectives of a notorious serial killer and the medical examiner following where his trail of victims leads. Which is really interesting. I'll bring that up here in a second. Something dark is lurking in the Louisiana bayou. A methodical killer with a penchant for medical experimentation. I don't have my glasses on. I'm sorry, this is hard. Is hard at work completing his most harrowing crime yet, taunting the authorities who desperately try to catch up. But forensic pathologist Dr. Wren Muller is the best there is. Armed with an encyclopedic knowledge of historical crimes and years of experience working in the medical examiner's office, she's never encountered a case she couldn't solve. Until now. Case after case is piling up on Wren's examination table, and soon she is sucked into an all-consuming cat-and-mouse chase with a brutal murderer getting more brazen by the day. An addictive read with a straight-from-the-morgue details only an autopsy technician could provide, The Butcher and the Wren promises to ensnare all who enter. Really interesting. I have listened to probably more Crime Junkie than I have Morbid. I've seen Crime Junkie live, and this was all before the plagiarism scandal. I've only listened to a couple of Morbid episodes. When it comes to true crime podcasts, I probably listen to more documentary-style podcasts instead of the banter, and Crime Junkie is scripted, and Morbid is not, and sometimes I have a hard time following 2 girls just kind of chatting if I don't know them personally. And I know after a while it may feel like you will know them personally because it feels like you're sitting in the room with them, but I just haven't listened to Morbid as much. And also when you start working in true crime podcasts, the last thing you want to listen to, for me at least, is true crime podcasts, some kind of podcast out. So, but I didn't realize until doing research on this that Alaina Urquhart is in fact an autopsy technician by day, true crime podcast host by night, which I thought was very fascinating, and you can 100% tell that she knows what she's talking about in this fictional book. So yeah, I gave All Good People Here 1 star, and actually wound up giving The Butcher and the Wren 5 stars. Do I think The Butcher and the Wren is a perfect book? Absolutely not. Did I have a great time reading it though? Yes. And it's so strange because it has tropes and techniques and plots that I typically don't like reading that have tampered my reviews with other books, such as Women in Captivity. I really don't like reading about that sort of thing, and I don't like being in the mind of a serial killer because sometimes it just feels so icky. This book has both of those, and I still wound up giving it 5 stars. This one is shorter. It's about 100 pages shorter than Ashley Flowers' book, so it was quicker to read, and the audiobook narrators were wonderful. Sorry to keep jumping back and forth, but I will say Ashley Flowers should definitely look into audiobook narrating. She has a great voice, and she only voices the intro and the outro. Alaina Urquhart does not do any audiobook narration with The Butcher and the Wren. So yeah, we are following a guy named Jeremy at the beginning, and you are super uncomfortable right off the bat because it is very evident that he is up to no good, and we find out that he is in fact a serial killer, and he starts doing some horrible things right off the bat in chapter 1, which just gets the story going. And Wren, The Butcher and the Wren, they call him the Bayou Butcher, and then Wren is the medical examiner. And it just really worked as a story. And you can tell that Alaina really put a lot of work and effort into this, and her writing was very meticulous, and she spent a lot of time with it, which unfortunately is something that I did not feel with Ashley Flowers' book. Again, it felt very cookie cutter and it felt very bland, so I didn't really feel Ashley in the story. I didn't really feel like there was much there other than just a thriller. And I'm not saying this to be mean, this is my honest review. And again, things sometimes just work for me and sometimes things just don't. And All Good People Here did not, but The Butcher and the Wren did. But again, that is all to say, you should absolutely read these books for yourself and get your own opinion, because The reviews are all over the place. I actually haven't even looked at the reviews for The Butcher and the Wren. Some people were upset with the writing. They really didn't like the writing. Please hire an editor. I did not see any. I saw a couple of things that needed to be edited, but I had an ARC copy, so my opinion on that doesn't matter. And the audiobook was completely finished. Some podcasters don't need book deals. Some people just gave it a thumbs down emoji. And then let's go to the 5-star reviews. Another read in one sitting for me. Absolutely. I pretty much did the same. So bloody good. Perfect for fans of Dexter's A Cat and Mouse Game Battle of Wits. Absolutely. But it seems like, too, a lot of the time that people are giving this 5 stars because they are Crime Junkie or Morbid fans, which is totally fine. Support your, authors how you want to support them, but there does seem to be just a little bit of bias in there. There, unfortunately, is not as many interviews with Alaina Urquhart discussing her book. At the end of the audiobook, though, if you are able to listen to or get your hands on the audiobook, the end she does do a quick little interview with her co-host, which I believe is her niece or sister, because I saw a couple people say sister, but I think it's her niece. But she kind of talks about her process and how this book took 5 years to write because she had kids during those 5 years and it was very hard to get back into it. But the idea of The Butcher and the Wren, unlike Ashley Flowers, who just kind of created this idea, which is not a problem at all, Alaina Urquhart had a dream, and that's kind of what sparked this serial killer nightmare of a story. So of course you're going to get reviews of people saying, true crime podcast hosts should not have book deals, because it kind of makes you wonder where exactly they got inspiration from. Anybody who writes a thriller, though, of course, is going to take inspiration probably from true crime cases. But it is interesting to pinpoint that because obviously this is what they do for a living, so we're very familiar with their work. We're very familiar with how they operate. So, and of course, before All Good People Here came out, there were reviews calling it a JonBenet Ramsey fanfic. And people for a while were very disturbed by that because that's a horrible thing to call like a murder of a 6-year-old. But after reading the book, I kind of realized what they were saying, and not as a term of like endearment, like, oh my gosh, it reads like a JonBenet Ramsey fanfic. Which, by the way, I learned is a real thing. Wattpad is full of JonBenet Ramsey fanfic, which needs to come to a stop now. But I think they were more so saying it as not a term of endearment and saying, like, this reads way too similar. The Butcher and the Wren, she does take paragraphs of time to explain Israel Keyes, Dennis Rader, Ted Bundy, and she, breaks that down a little bit, clearly showing her knowledge of these serial killers. So, yes, it's evident that these people took inspiration from real-life cases that they have once talked about on their own podcasts. But again, teach their own. If that's a problem, then I understand, but if not, keep reading. Thank you guys so much for checking out my review of All Good People Here and The Butcher and the Wren. Please tell me if you plan on reading these, if you have read these, what you rated them, why you won't be reading them. Tell me everything in the comments below. And if you would like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Head on down to the description and check out my Patreon, join my book club, the Morbidly Curious Book Club, and all the socials and stuff are down there. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!